You're about to listen to the Complete Developer Podcast, the podcast by coders, for coders, about all aspects of life as a developer.
I'm Will, the curmudgeonly experienced developer.
And I'm Beej, the optimistic newbie developer. Welcome to another episode of Complete Developer Podcast. Time is something that we all feel slipping through our fingers at one point or another in life. This week, we're talking about increasing the value of your time. We'll start off talking about why you should increase the value of your time and some signs that indicate you don't value your time enough. Then we'll discuss how to calculate the value of your time in dollars and cents and talk about why that value is lower than what you're going to expect. And finally, we'll give some tips for increasing the value of the time you spend earning. But before we get started, Will, what have you been fighting this week?
Time management, actually. that was sort of the genesis of this episode. I have a mastermind group that meets on Tuesday nights, and it's me and two other guys. Initially, there were three others, but one of them kind of dropped off because he didn't have enough time. But one of the guys has got a pretty good way that he manages his primary tasks for the week, and he broke it out into an Excel spreadsheet and kind of encouraged us to, both the other two of us to really use that. And I haven't completely gone with that, but what I did do is take one of his other suggestions, which is like actually filling in Google Calendar with all the stuff I have to do. So like my commute is on there. The time I'm at work is blocked off. Like all those things are on there, and it is horrible. Like just looking at how little actual blank spots there are on the calendar, like now I understand why it's so bad.
You made fun of me for my calendar being so crazy.
Which I need to talk to you about your calendar, actually, because some of the stuff that's on there is like your personal tasks that I think got attributed to the wrong calendar, so they're showing up on mine. And so I'm sitting here going, what is this? I didn't put this here. And then I'm looking and I'm like, oh, it's the CDP calendar.
That shouldn't be on those.
Well, it was like when you do certain things for the podcast.
Oh, yeah. They're supposed to be on there so that Jason could see them too, so he would know where I was in the process.
Okay, so that is supposed to be there. But anyway, I've been fighting that slugging match and just realizing how messed up my time management still is. Like, I've been working on it for a very long time, and I think I'm pretty effective at getting a lot of things done, but I still feel like there's a lot of room for optimization, and this has really, really clarified that and where those problems are. So, how about you?
We just had the first Code Newbie Nashville meetup. It was a mixer at Tequila's Mexican restaurant. Lots of fun and lots of margaritas. We had, about 11 people show up?
Yeah, 11 or 12, it seems like.
I think we had about 20 sign up for it, and then about 11 or 12 showed up, which, looking at the stats for the other Code Newbie mixers,
it's not
pretty
bad
good
at all.
Yeah. We also had your family there, your wife
Thank
and
goodness.
daughter.
Yeah, they were a huge help. Just want to shout out to Maggie, because I'm sure she's probably listening to this in the car on the way back from the beach, because that's where they are right now. Yeah, she was hugely helpful with like the sign-up forms and, just getting all the pieces together.
Oh, yeah. She made sure everyone had a name tag.
At least one.
Yes, at least one. And they weren't allowed to have one until they'd signed the sign-in sheet.
Yeah.
Even me, who made the sign-up sheet.
Yeah. She was definitely an organizational factor there. That was quite helpful. And Kathleen was a lot of help as well. Just, getting things figured out, making sure that everything needed to, was where it needed to be. So...
Well, I definitely made some new friends. Can't wait for our first community coding event, which, speaking of fighting, that's what we've been fighting this past week, is a location for that. Thankfully, we have one that may not be the most ideal location for having it every month, but it's a place where we can have it this month.
Yeah, and for the Nashville peeps that are listening, if you got a place... Like, get a hold of me, because that would really get rid of a lot of pain for us if you have something.
The issue that I ran into is I had a lot of places offer to host us if we could do it during the work day, during the work week.
Yeah, which we can't, because we work.
People are working, people are in school. Yeah, and they were willing to host us for free, where they normally charge groups, but what they do is business courses and stuff like that. And so they're only open during business hours. So that's where we ran into the issue. Like I said, we found a place that we can have it for this month, and hopefully next month we can find someplace a little bit better situated for everybody. So after the event, I actually got to spend the afternoon downtown playing tourist with Saran. She wanted the true Nashville tourist experience, so we headed downtown, walked down Broadway, hit a few honky-tonks. She tried on hats and cowboy boots. And then we grabbed some Mike's ice cream before her flight back.
Nice. Did she ever utter the phrase, "Hey, y'all want to go to Tootsie's"?
No, but I did.
Well, of course you did.
And we also, this is really funny, we saw someone in a T-Rex outfit.
The dinosaur?
Like the dinosaur, like the blow-up kind of outfit that they walk around in. Yeah. Then I got on Facebook a few days ago and saw someone had posted pictures. So I knew the person in the T-Rex outfit that we saw.
Welcome to Nashville.
Yeah, exactly. But no, seriously, I'd almost forgotten how much fun it is to be a tourist here in Nashville.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff with country music.
Oh, well, it's not just
huge.
country.
Yeah.
I mean, the downtown is big country, but there's a lot of
hip-hop.
Of course, with CMA Fest going on, there's a lot of country. So.
Yeah.
But speaking of music, it's about time to roll the music. This week for IoTs, I found this really awesome blog post called Hacking Retro Tech, and I'll post a link to the blog post, but for a couple of IoTs, I want to talk about some of his projects and tell you guys some of the really cool stuff you can do. So this first one is called the Alexa phone, that uses a Raspberry Pi to convert a 1970s trim phone to run Amazon's Alexa voice service. To use the headset, pick it up, speak your query, and then hang up. A built-in speaker will deliver the response. It has a changing LED and authentic sounds to indicate activity. So the hardware you need for this is pretty simple. It's just a trim phone, Raspberry Pi 2B, an Ethernet cable or Wi-Fi dongle, USB 2.0 mini microphone, and an external speaker. And the only software involved is the Raspbian OS and the Alexa Pi code. It's a pretty simple project, doesn't really involve any soldering, and something I think Will could even do. And we have a special comment this week, don't we?
Yeah, actually, Saran from Code Newbie actually talked to us on Twitter.
Awesome. What'd you say?
She said she had tons of fun visiting Tennessee for Code Newbie Nashville. Shout out to @Bowtie Beach for being such a great host.
Thank you. Thanks, Saran. We didn't get a chance to give you anything while you're down here, but we do have a t-shirt and some other Complete Developer Podcast swag for you for the next time we see you. If you guys would like some Complete Developer swag, leave us a comment on the website, any of our social media, or a review in iTunes or any of our other podcatchers. We're really pushing to receive reviews, so if you leave one on iTunes or Stitcher or any of the other podcatchers, we're most likely to read that over any other comments. To start the episode off, I have a quote from James Clear that says, "Not all uses of time are equal, and this simple truth can make a big difference in life. Understanding how to get the most out of your time starts with knowing in exact terms what your time is worth."
How do you, or why would you increase the value of your time? What's the goal here?
Good question, and I have another quote that says it so succinctly I couldn't even paraphrase it. This is from Carey Nieuwhof, and it states, "Other people value your time exactly as you value it." So one of the reasons you want to increase the value of your time is because it's the way other people perceive the value of your time.
Well, it's like any other economic system, right?
Yes.
It'll go to what the market bears.
Yes. Like your bosses, coworkers, even subordinates value your time based on the amount of value you place on it. Same in your social relationships, like your significant other, friends, family.
And they can actually be quite a bit worse if you have low value of your time.
Yes, especially your not work time.
Yes.
I know plenty of people who have very strong value of their work time, but very low value of their not work time.
Yeah. Of course, I've also seen it go the other way, too.
That's true. That's very true. Another reason is finding fulfillment. You want to live purposefully to bring pleasure and fulfillment to better contribute to the world around you, to your world and the world of the others in your life.
Yeah, because you don't want to be sitting there or, laying there in your bed dying when you're 80, thinking about how you filed TPS reports when you were 30. Like that's pretty much nobody's end goal.
Very, very true.
There's probably that one guy, but other than one weirdo, that's not what anybody wants.
No. The more you value your time, the more time you'll have to do the things you value. When you increase the value of your time, it takes less time to reach the same level of value.
Right. It's effectively a commodity.
Yes.
And you're trading. Most of us that have day jobs, and really, honestly, it doesn't really matter what you do to get money to come in. You're probably going to be trading at least some time for some value, even if you're rebalancing an investment portfolio and you're a multi-billionaire with a monocle and a cigar in your mouth. You still have to spend time fiddling with it. You're just trading a very, very small amount of time for an outsized amount of value.
Exactly.
And that's a big thing that with the people I know that are doing really, really well financially is that they understand that they're always making that transaction.
And one of the biggest mistakes we make in life is having poor use of our time. That comes from Patrick at FromDreamsToLifestyle.com. But some signs that you don't value your time include not having a plan or regular pattern for your week or workday. You really need to be planning your week before it begins.
Yeah, and this is what I do every Sunday night. It was at 8 o'clock, and then Game of Thrones came on, so I pushed it back to 7. Priorities, people.
For most of us, work is rather predictable, so you can plan your priorities around the predictable parts of your day.
Because like my day job right now, I get in at 7, maybe a little bit before every morning, and then I have a 9 o'clock meeting. I know that's coming, and I pick my tasks based off of how much time I have before the meeting, and the same thing after. And I know that all that time, I know what's going to happen, and as a result, I'm able to be more efficient and treat my time with actual value because I know what's coming.
Yeah, exactly. And you're creating a rhythm or kind of a flow to your workday. You know where there are certain parts that are going to disrupt a flow, so you just build that into the flow of your workday.
Yep.
Another is you don't know how to politely say no.
And a corollary to this as well is if you can't say it politely, you still don't have control.
Exactly.
In fact, your control is worse.
Yes, yeah. And, know the people you need in a meeting and the ones you don't.
Every place I've ever worked, we've had 1 or 2 people that are very time-consuming in meetings, and we've actually taken steps to avoid having them in meetings that matter. Another one is don't try to accommodate everything everybody wants.
That's a very big one. That's really the core of this being able to politely say no is to value your time. You have to understand what is a priority. Know that you can't accommodate every request.
Well, you know what you call somebody that accommodates every request? A serf, right? Because it's like, oh, you're in a feudal system and your lord can put you down, basically, if you don't obey. Like, you don't want to be in that situation. That's not because part of the reason they had that system was to keep the peasants in place so that they didn't kill off the rulers. So
make sure that you have a clear goal for every conversation or meeting, and make sure your meetings or your projects fit within the criteria of what you're trying to accomplish, because it can be very easy to have a meeting that really doesn't fit with your criteria or get started on a project that is not helping you accomplish your ultimate goals.
Yeah, and I've had so many meetings like this where it's, we had a problem with our morning stand-up meetings for a while, and I think it's better now. And that was supposed to be a 10-minute, just about what we got to do today, what's blocking us, and what we got done yesterday. It's supposed to be very quick. You're supposed to be able to stand up the entire time and not have your feet hurt. We always sit down. And we had several people that tended to try to turn it into project planning meetings. And so instead of a 10-minute meeting, you have like a 55-minute meeting, and then you get out and you don't have any time to do anything before lunch.
And sometimes you have to say something like, hey, is this really that important, or should I be working on this other project? And we're going to talk about this in just a little bit, but that pitches it back to them and lets them choose the priority.
Yeah, so that they're at fault.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wrong.
Another sign that you don't value your time is you are habitually late or absent from appointments.
This is actually something I've noticed with you, is because you used to do this for a very long time. And it was like, oh, Beej is coming. Well, tell him it's going to be 45 minutes earlier than it actually is because he'll be late. And now if I do that, you're 45 minutes early and I'm sitting there looking stupid. And so I don't do that anymore. But, for a while there, because you didn't.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's not so much that. It's I didn't value my...
it was your attention more than your time, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that as I didn't value my personal time.
Yeah.
Because if you look back, if it had anything to do with work or school, I was always early.
Yeah.
And I actually had a boss once say, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're fired.
Yeah.
Of course, nobody ever got fired from that job, but they like to say that
too. Yeah. But I mean, this is a character change I've seen in you probably over the last 6 or 7 months, especially.
Well, it's another thing that I've started to understand the importance of personal time.
Yeah.
Whereas before I would allow myself to add and add and add. I had trouble saying no when it came to my personal life. I was really good at it with work, but very bad in my personal life.
Yeah.
And I've learned that I can't succeed in life even if I allow that in my personal life. And the other thing here is if you are habitually late or absent to certain appointments and not others, reevaluate if that appointment is really necessary.
Yeah, because if it there may be a reason that you're not showing up on time. It's because it really doesn't matter. It's the appointment to talk about changing your smoke alarm batteries. Not really, but like the rough equivalent of that in your life. It's so low priority, and you agreed to do something, and you really don't. You're not feeling it. And a lot of times it just really shows kind of the emotional backing. Finally,
on our list of signs that you don't value your time is you waste time on social media. And I want to start this discussion off with an exception. Social media marketing is not a waste of time.
Well, and actually interacting with other people isn't either.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people do is they get on Facebook and they just scroll. And it's like you're a voyeur on everybody else's life.
Yes.
And that's all you're doing is you're hiding in the bushes. You're doing the social equivalent or the electronic equivalent of hiding in the bushes outside of somebody's house.
Well, that's what social media is for.
Yeah, it really is. But,
personally, I'm in several different groups that I like to have conversations with people in. I like Twitter. And it's really funny me saying that because I was opposed to Twitter for the longest time.
Same here.
And I've gotten on there, and I guess I've gotten in the right groups of people on Twitter because I get on there and it's people that post interesting articles, and I have a feed of, hey, check this out. I think it's cool. You might too stuff. And so I'll get on there. I'll scroll down. I'll find something interesting. I'll look at it. I'll probably buffer it for the podcast. And then I'll comment to the person that originally posted it saying, hey, really neat, and start a conversation.
But it's really easy for that to completely consume a lot of time because, those websites are built to be click factories.
Oh, yeah.
And
they are. And like we were saying, you can use them for good. I don't want for us to come across as saying, oh, social media is a complete time waster, because it's not. Right. If used properly, it could actually save time.
Yeah. Or it can just be, a little bit of entertainment. Like the thing is being intentional, really. Take,
for example.
It's like watching TV.
Well, I was like, take, for example, our audio quality. Jason, our audio guy, we met him in Atlanta, but we really didn't get to know him.
Except through Twitter.
Yeah,
initially.
until he started a conversation with us on Twitter, and we had a back and forth, and then now we're good friends with him.
Yeah. I think the big thing here is that if you're spending time on social media or entertainment of any sort and you're not actually entertained, like you're there because it's a default thing that you do.
Yeah, that's true.
Then that's the problem of saying, okay, I don't value my time, or I don't know what I need to do.
I'll be honest, when I was in school, I was really bad about this because you just get so fried from studying.
Oh, yeah.
That you don't want to have to think, and so you get on social media to just look at stuff.
Yeah, or you play video games. Like there's some video games. There's some of them that you can't when you're like that. But yeah, I mean that can be a sign though, right? Because what you really should have probably been doing is sleeping.
Yes.
Or going and actually having real social interaction and that feedback.
Mm-hmm. Now we've kind of talked about some of the signs that you're not truly valuing your time. And really, Will and I do some of these. We're guilty of not valuing our time as much as we could.
Yeah.
Once you know in dollars and cents how much of an hour of your day is truly worth, you can make better decisions on a daily basis. And this is another quote from James Clear. He wrote a great post on calculating the value of your time. You want to start by measuring the time you put into earning. And this is not just your time at work, but like you mentioned on your
Google Calendar. It's a Google Calendar. It's the greatest calendar ever.
The way you start doing this is to measure the time you put into earning. And this is not just your time at work, but like you said about your Google Calendar, count the time you drive to and from work.
Yeah, and the amount of time you have to spend getting ready in the morning.
Yes.
And your cool down time after you get home. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times you're fried, and that makes a huge difference.
And the time you spend on side projects at home.
Especially in education, time, any time that you spend, training and bettering your craft, maintaining your computers so that you can do it. Any of that kind of stuff, you need to actually put all those into your time management or time measurement.
And we actually had an episode on measuring your time.
Yep, with Toggle.
With Toggle, which we both use. You got me into using Toggle, and I know we've talked to the people over at Toggle a bit. They really liked the episode.
Yeah.
Of course, we were talking about the benefits of them.
It's a good product. It just works. Like it's in the background of the flow, and you really need to get something like that to measure your actual time, because it's very easy to go, oh, I spend 30 minutes commuting to work. When you measure it, you figure out, oh, yeah, by the way, I stop at the gas station and I get breakfast, and, and I take a slightly different route to get around traffic, and it takes a little bit longer getting in. Like, you need actual measurements, not don't use your Google Map estimate that you came up with at 10 o'clock at night.
That's so true. Well, like driving here today, I texted you about 20 minutes before I was supposed to be here and said, hey, I'm in dead standstill traffic because there was a wreck on the interstate. And it was like, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even get over to get off the interstate because it was just completely standstill.
Yeah, and it was actually helpful to me because I was like, oh man, he's going to be on time now, and then you texted in like, oh good, he's going to be 20 minutes late. Thank goodness, because I was so far behind.
That brings up another point, and this is kind of not part of this area, but if you are not usually late and are going to be late, send a message, text, phone call, especially to work or work-related events. It is so appreciated.
Yeah. Well, and social events too.
Yeah.
Can honestly, if you're not regularly late, it shows that you respect the other person's time, which means they'll respect yours.
So once you have your time that you put into earning measured, and you want to measure this on a day, weekly basis, now you want to take a look at the amount you earn during your working time. And this includes your take-home pay or your salary after taxes, and then any side projects that you're working on. This is the revenue that comes in minus expenses and taxes.
Yeah. And that's not... Sometimes people have a difference between what their business revenue is and what they actually take home for various reasons, equipment upkeep, those kind of things, or just, having padding. Figure it based off of what you actually bring in to your personal pocket.
So once you have these two measurements, you're going to divide the total money you earn by the total time you spent earning it. So
you're going to be so depressed.
Yeah, that's so true. The example I have is from James Clear's blog post. In it, he uses 2,500 hours per year. And as Will was pointing out to me earlier before recording this section, 2,000 hours per year is what you get with a 40-hour work week.
Right. But that's just your time actually on the clock. That's the example that most places use. And they tell you that this is what your hourly rate is. But when you start actually looking at your actual time commitment, not so much.
Yes, exactly. And that's why he added another 500 hours to that. I am assuming just to show a little difference. So let's say you work 2,500 hours a year, and this is about 50 hours a week. So that's
with 2 weeks off.
Yeah, with 2 weeks. That's drive time, back and forth, and then a little bit of time in the evenings on your side projects and stuff. Times 50 weeks. So if you make $50,000 a year, what you're actually making per hour for time of work is $20 an hour. If your salary is $75,000 a year, you make $30 an hour. If it's $100,000 a year, you're making $40 an hour. If you make $1 million a year, your hourly rate is $400 an hour. Thinking about that, where does your time go? Your hourly value is really less than expected.
I mean, there's a reason that they tell you that, it's a 40-hour work week is because things like commute are things that they can't calculate very well because they don't know where you live. And it's also not an expense that they are imposing on you exactly.
So let me ask you, why don't freelancers charging $40 an hour make $100,000 a year?
Well, because they don't get 40 hours of billable time in a week.
Same with the reason that consultants that charge $400 an hour don't make $1 million a year.
Well, and there's also a level too where you just don't spend that much time.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain point where the amount you make stops actually improving your quality of life as much as the time you would have committed if you just keep that time.
That's very true as well. And my rates as a freelancer have gone up as I've gotten better.
Yeah.
Because I can do more in the time that I'm billing. So I charge more.
Yeah. And I've had to do the same. And my hourly rate when I was contracting before was still way too low. When I switched to a full-time job that was fewer hours, it was quite a significant pay bump.
You also have to think about the time that goes into earning outside of your billable hours. Like we've discussed, travel time. But a few other things that we don't think about are education time or setup teardown time. Getting dressed in the morning before you go to work, coming home and cooling down and letting your brain refresh before you go work on your side project.
Well, and there's opportunity cost as well, right? Because like, let's say that you're making, you're working all day and then somebody's got a party at 6:00 and you get off work at 5:45, but you have to wear a suit and the party's like a beach party. You just lost the opportunity to go to that party, even though you can go directly from work. Like you're at least going to have the overhead of having to change clothes if you have a place to do it. So there's a lot of opportunity costs here too.
Gas station bathroom. Oh yeah.
That's my favorite place to change. It's the gas station bathroom. Just put your clothes on the floor. It'll be fine.
I've done this a few times. I take a hanger in there. A good way to really determine this is to track your time.
That's why we got into using Toggle for time tracking, is because if you like your conception of what you're actually spending time on and what you really are spending it on tend not to match for most people. In fact, if you don't accurately track your time, you probably really have no idea, especially a week out or even a couple of days. It's just gone. You're not going to hold that in your mind. Another thing that can help a lot is things like Rescue Time, that's an app that will track time on websites and documents. So like it basically will show you what you are working on at different points. And there's a lot of these out there floating around that will periodically take a screen capture. And so you can see a timeline of what you were doing when, like what was actually up on your screen. I'm a little jittery about these kind of things because of the fact that, hey, it's taking a screen cap. But you may find that useful. Just be careful and secure that.
Yeah. These are things that if you're dealing with sensitive data, you really don't want to use.
Yeah.
And in the documentation on them, because I actually looked into it, it says that.
Yeah. Like really what you should do is write your own app. Periodically. Like use like if you're on Windows, there's Windows hooks that will take a screen cap, dump it to a directory, make it where it's just on that box, because if the sensitive data is already showing up on the screen, you're maybe okay-ish.
Yeah.
And be really diligent about removing it and only using it for a short period of time periodically to recalibrate.
The psych student in me thought of behavioral modification. That's what I did my master's work in, was applied behavior analysis. And in this, you collect data on the normal use. So one thing I really like about, I'm currently using Spark People again to try and lose weight. I want to get down to a certain weight. Well, you start off and you just record what you eat and what you exercise. There's not do this, do that. It's just record to get a baseline. And then from that baseline and your goals, you create a plan.
What you mean, like actually having a set of directions that starts with your actual starting point?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's what behavior modification is. You start where the person is, you collect data to understand that, and then you create a plan based on that data, and then you implement the plan, adjusting it as you go along as the data changes. Part of it is also to reward yourself. If you implement a plan to, say, track your time, and you go a month of using a time tracker like Toggle, let's say your goal is to do it on workday, so you use it 5 out of 7 days of the week. Well, at the end of the month, you look back and you can look at your Toggle screen and see that you've used it all those days, and you can go, all right, you know what? I'm going to reward myself. I'm going to go buy an expensive bottle of bourbon.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, whatever reward works for you, and the reward doesn't even have to be related to the behavior.
Well, I mean, and this comes back to the value of your time, right? Because if you're not rewarding yourself for how you're spending your time, you're saying your time has no value to yourself.
That's so true. That is so true. And that leads right into the final point here, which is increasing the value of your time. So we've kind of built up to this. What you really want to do is do a cost-benefit analysis of your time and look at what your time is worth. Calculate the cost in dollars of the time you spent, and that's what we just talked about.
Yeah, and do that on lots of things.
Yes. And then ask yourself, is there a net gain or loss of money from your time spent on something?
Yeah, and I'll add something to this as well. Like if you do this on enough tasks, you start to get an intuitive grasp of what's worthwhile.
Yeah, you do this.
Yeah.
You're really good at this.
It's because I do this all the time. Like this is how I think. Like even back when we were in college, I was reading books that were pointing this out, and it's like you hit a point where there's almost a Zen level of it where you just immediately go, that's not worth my time. I'm not doing that.
No. And so just to give you guys some examples, if your time is worth $25 an hour, and that's what you've calculated it's worth, it isn't worth waiting in line for 30 minutes for a $10 gift card.
Right.
If your time is worth $40 an hour, it is worth paying $15 for shipping rather than spending an hour at the store. And if your time is worth $80 an hour, it's worth it to get the direct flight that saves a couple of hours, even if it costs $150 more.
Yeah, and this is something that people talk about, like corporate executives that get on jets, and they have these very expensive flights. Like if you look at what the value of, I don't know, Bill Gates' time is, like it's very, very hard for him to do something that saves time and isn't worth the money. As you scale up the playing field, a lot of things become easier because you can throw money at the problem and get your time back.
Well, it's like when I did the layout for your business site.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, sure, here's some money. Just make it go away.
You paid me to do that work.
Yeah.
Because
And I also filled up the beer fridge here, let's be honest.
Okay, yeah. Well, I count that as pay.
Yeah.
I accept cash and beer, so and bourbon, but no, you paid me to do that work.
Yeah, and I calculated, what that was worth to me, like how long I thought it would take and what my hourly rate was worth. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Even if you were slower by quite a bit than me, just because of the differential in hourly rates. Like it's a form of local arbitrage.
Once you have a cost-benefit analysis, we talked about schedule, and we're going to talk even more about scheduling in later episodes because we have about 3 or 4 episodes on time management, and scheduling your life, basically. But you want to fix a schedule. You're spending your time the same way every week. You go to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Fix a schedule. Make it so that you have your priorities and you have a workflow that works around those priorities. If you know you have a meeting at 9 a.m. every Monday,
don't start anything at 8:55 and don't be getting there at 8:55.
Yeah, exactly. The details may change, but the way the time is spent is going to be the same. Like what you talk about in that meeting every Monday morning may be a little bit different each week, but you still have a Monday morning meeting at 9 a.m. You need to stay strict with this.
Yeah, and we've done this with the recordings. Like we record on Monday nights. Other than last Monday night, I can't think of when the last time was that we didn't. It's been a while.
Yeah. And the only reason we didn't record last week is because you were sick.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an odd circumstance that happens.
Yeah, it's the break in routine is an actual exception, not a expected permutation.
Mm-hmm. So I have a sample production schedule for you guys, and Will mentioned it in his "What Are You Fighting This Week" about my stuff showing up on the CDP calendar, but that's so that he knows what I'm doing each day of the week, and our audio guy knows where I am in the process of the audio. So the ideal schedule for the CDP is on Sundays, we write our outlines.
Yeah, and that's on my calendar too now, by the way, after late last night.
Yeah. So on Sundays, we write our outlines. On Mondays, we do our recording. On Tuesdays, I do the audio editing. And on Wednesdays, I do the show notes and the emails. And sometimes Will does the show notes. It's rare.
Yeah, because I'm a bit of a slacker on that part.
Yeah. Thursdays is publication day. And that's also the time to correct any errors. We have a few great listeners that we have one particular friend of ours that I've been friends with since I was 5 years old, and you've been friends with since you met me.
Yeah.
And he downloads, hi Jason, he downloads our episodes at midnight every Thursday, or Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and listens to them. And if there's an error, he sends me a text, because that helps so that I can correct that before the rest of you guys wake up and drive to work the next morning.
Yeah.
It's already fixed.
Yeah. And that is hugely helpful. And having that running plan of how the pieces work together. Like, of course, you got Fridays and Saturdays listed as downtime.
That's because we don't do anything
for the podcast.
Yeah. No, this is a podcast schedule.
Yeah.
We don't do anything. I don't do anything for the podcast on Fridays and Saturdays. And really, this is like, I spend probably about an hour or two writing outlines. We spend a little more than that. We spend about 3, sometimes 4 hours recording. My editing, Tuesday night editing is about 2 hours. Wednesday night show notes and emails is about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah, because like on my calendar, I think the recording time is blocked off from like 5:30 until 10:30, because even though it doesn't always run that entire amount of time, it can.
It has.
And it has more than once. And so like I know that I can't count on that time necessarily being there, so I go ahead and block it off.
Next, know when and how to say no. And the first point I have under here is actually a plug for a podcast that I listen to, which is the Sean West podcast. And Sean McCabe, the host of that podcast, has developed a value-based pricing course, when I have enough money saved up, I plan on going through this course. I've listened to all of his episodes on the course and on value-based pricing multiple times. There's actually a handful of episodes that I've listened to at least 4 times already. Because
I've heard good things about this podcast from you and from a couple of the guys in mastermind groups and at MicroConf and some of that. Like it came up repeatedly.
Yeah, if you don't listen to it already and you're wanting to start a small business or break out on your own, listen to the Sean West podcast. If you want to start a podcast of your own, listen to the podcast dude on the Sean West Network.
Yeah.
Like, our audio improvements have come from 2 places. Our friend Jason down in Atlanta and me listening to the podcast dude. You know, and I'll send episodes to Will and he'll occasionally listen to one here and there, but I listen every week and look forward to them.
Yeah, well, and once I work through my backlog a little bit further on podcasts, because I found a few that were interesting and I bulk downloaded episodes and I'm working my way through those because that's part of how I pack my time and use it effectively.
Yeah, that's what I do too when I'm driving.
Yeah.
So the value-based pricing course is talking about getting the best clients, and you need clients that value their own time as well as yours, and how to say no to bad clients.
Yeah, because if they can't pay enough, it's very common for people that start into freelancing to think that because I need the work that I should necessarily take whatever work is there.
Exactly.
And, we have terms for people that take whatever happens, whatever's available. We call them scavengers because you're basically dumpster diving on clients.
Yeah, pretty much. The way I look at it is the first client I ever took was one of your clients.
Yep.
That you didn't have time to spend doing. You could have done what I did. It was more valuable for you to help me out by setting me up with that.
That was part of it, and the other part was it was something that you had just done. Like, because he has a podcast, and you had just like I think you and I were still emailing back and forth, getting a few kinks knocked out of the blog and getting the podcast set up and all that stuff when he called me about it, wanting me to do it. And I'm going, well, Beach is a perfect one for this. Whereas I would be kind of terrible because I would still be bugging you anyway.
Yeah. And the thing about it is he was a great client.
Yeah.
We had a few issues with the font and stuff like that, but when we discussed pricing, he was like, all right, well, what is the value of your time? It wasn't what deal can I get? It was what am I getting for the value that I'm paying? Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the same deal I set up with you as well, right? Because I don't want to have to micromanage somebody, because if I'm going to micromanage, I might as well just be doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going, I want to be able to pay you enough where you can just do it and it's no longer my problem. Those are the clients you want. Mm-hmm. The other ones, like the lower your rate is, the more people will. I mean, it's like 1,000 little cuts of stuff, and I've noticed that with a lot of companies I've worked at, where the smaller companies that you sell a product to, they tend to be the most ornery, grouchy customers that cuss out your tech support people. And you get like a Fortune 500 company, and they just don't even they're just writing you a check. And they're more pleasant.
Well, it's because they recognize that they are paying for a value.
Yeah.
Like, it would be more expensive for them to do it themselves. The smaller companies, a lot of them, they don't have as much, at least the way I look at it, they don't have as much on the monetary end.
Yeah.
They have a lot more on the time end.
Yeah, and the effort end.
And so they're thinking, they're more tight with that money.
Yeah, and not as tight with the time and the attention. It's almost like what we talked about with social media.
Exactly.
Versus, if you look at a social media group that anybody can get in, or just open social media versus a paid forum, the quality of the questions on there, the quality of the answers, and the length of the answers will be different based on how those people value their time. There's a couple of books on this that I would love to recommend to our audience. And I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Nassim Taleb. He talks about resilience, and one of the big things that he pushes is people having skin in the game, because it makes fragile systems when they don't. And you can see this in U.S. politics. pretty much everywhere you look.
So, bringing things back around to the topic we're actually talking about, social graces come into play very heavily when saying no. There is a wrong way to say no.
Yeah. It's usually no.
It usually is, or it's
grouchy that you even deign to ask, or it's wishy-washy.
How dare you even ask that? There's no possible way we could do this.
Yeah. And honestly, the right way to say no, a pretty good percentage of the time, is actually find a yes somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So if it's like, if they're trying to get you to do, let's say you build websites and they really want you to work on their social media marketing. Well, yeah, you could do it at a lower value because you're not going to be as good. And you're also, becoming a jack of all trades, which is not really, like, that doesn't pay very well. Or you could forward them to somebody who does that as a specialty. Now you've helped that person get something. You've helped the client get something. You've gotten the weight off your back, and both of them still like you.
I mean, this is where networking really comes in, too, is, having those people. It's like you have sent a few people my way to do WordPress stuff because, one, you don't like doing it. I don't care much for doing it, but I can. Yeah. I've got more recent experience with it than you because you're like, I don't really want to deal with this. I've got too many other things in the air right now to really focus. And so you sent them my way, and I was able to work with them. I've gotten several different clients out of that and from referrals from them and stuff. Sometimes you do just have to say no. You have to say, hey, this is not the right fit. And a great example of this is, I was telling Will about this before the episode, but I had an interview with a certain department within the state that we live in for what I was told was a junior developer position. I went in, met the project manager and the two lead developers, and we went through an interview of two phases, like a behavioral interview where they talked about, have you ever been in this situation and how did you handle it kind of thing. Rocked that out because I like to talk to people. I'm good at that. I tell stories, It's me, yeah. And then we get to the technical stuff, and it was all SQL, like every single technical question. And finally we got to the end of the technical interview, and they were kind of closing everything out. They said, hey, do you have any more questions? Do you have anything you want to tell us? And I just looked at them and said, I don't think I'm the right person for you. It seems to me you guys are looking for a SQL DBA that has some .NET experience. Whereas I'm a junior .NET developer with a little bit of SQL experience. Yeah. I've got enough experience to where I could answer your questions, but I don't think I'm what you're looking for.
Yeah, they're looking for the right side of the Venn diagram, and you're the left side.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a slight overlap, but it's not enough.
Yeah, that is it exactly. And I'll tell you what, the interesting thing is they appreciated that so much that I've already been contacted about another position within the state for a junior .NET developer that actually meets my abilities.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you have good social graces, it really, really goes a long, long way.
The thing is true, it was also saying no in a matter of, this is not the best for me or for you.
Yeah, and I think that giving an explanation for why you said no is probably a really, really powerful thing.
That's so true.
Being able to say, hey, look, this request is really, it's not quite appropriate for what I'm trying to do. Like if you're talking to a web server, you want actual feedback of what went wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same way in interpersonal communication as well. Going, hey, this request is, it's, you may want to give them you don't want to give them a 500. You want, it's more like a 404. It's like this file's elsewhere,
Yeah.
Or a permanent redirect. Like that's a 302 is really better than a 500 in this case, I guess.
I want to point out that
I'm a giant dork.
Well, yes, you are. But I also want to point out giving an explanation also helps you to avoid future situations of saying no. Because it helps to... So my show notes say illuminate inappropriate requests, and it autocorrect should have been eliminate.
I was kind of wondering. I'm like, how do you illuminate inappropriate requests? Do you set them on fire?
I don't know how that got in there because
autocorrect is the devil, man.
Yeah, it really is. But it basically helps you to avoid future situations of saying no when you explain why.
Yeah, and you actually give what's actually going on.
Yeah. And finally, never feel guilty about saying no.
Yeah. No. Wait. You gave me the stink eye then. But yeah, I mean, like, and this really comes down to who is sovereign in your life. Is it you or is it somebody else? If you're feeling guilty for saying no, it's either because it's something you should be doing, or more than likely, you said no because it's not something you should be doing, and now you feel emotionally attached to the fact that you're not doing it.
Well, I'll tell you another brief story. I was recently interviewing for a position similar to the one where I went up to New York for, where it's like they bring you in, they train you for 2 months, and then they send you out to different places.
Yeah.
Well, that was cool. It's actually down here in the South, close to where some of our friends live. So I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome. It'll be a little bit away, but not so far that I can't drive up here. We may have to change our record date, but I could drive up here for recordings.
Yeah, and that would work way better than where you were.
But anyways, so I go through the technical interview and all the interviews, and I get to the interviewing with the manager, and she's explaining how things work there, and she explains how that they take your resume and basically turn it into a curriculum vitae. Even what I didn't understand was when I pointed out to her that's a curriculum vitae, she's like, no, it's a resume but with extra stuff. I'm like, you're describing the exact definition of a curriculum vitae. Just call it what it is. And she kind of get annoyed with me at that. But I'm like, look, I'm a pedantic
Can't imagine
nerd.
that.
I just told her, I'm like, I'm a pedantic nerd. If you're gonna say you're doing something, call it what you're doing. But anyway, that's not where I'm going with this. So she's explaining the whole process they do with the resume and stuff. And then she tells me, and because a lot of these companies, they want people with 3 to 5 years experience, we adjust your resume to reflect the knowledge that you have. And I stopped her right there. I said, are you telling me that you tell them I have 3 to 5 years experience in something I don't? She said, yeah. She's like, that's the only way that, you can get in the market. And I'm like, nope. We'll stop this right now. I am
Bye,
not.
Felicia.
I stopped it. I'm like, it stinks because it would have been a great opportunity. But when she told me that, I said, I am not comfortable with that.
That's a poison pill or a poison chalice.
Yeah. She tried to convince me. I'm like, look, I have a moral and ethical code, and that breaks it.
Yeah.
It may not, my moral code may not agree with anyone else.
But yeah, it'll.
I was like, in the short term, that may help me. It may hurt me to not do that in the short term, but in the long run of my life, not breaking my own moral code is more important. And I do not feel guilty for saying no to that.
Right. And you shouldn't. And it's not even just with things that are unethical, which that was very obviously so, but even things that are, that are career moves where, they try to rope you into doing support when you want to do development, for instance.
Yeah.
You need to say no to that and, not go into that situation because it's not going to get better just because you said yes, more than likely.
Exactly. Finally, surround yourself with people who have similar values.
Yeah, and this is something you just ran into, right? Because had you gone with that cohort and you'd been working with other people there, you're sitting in a room full of liars.
Yeah.
Even if you, at that point, don't feel that you are one, you're already at odds going in, and it's just gonna burn your time.
Do the people around you value your time? It can be hard to let go of friendships or reduce interactions. I've had to do it.
Yeah, I've had to do it a lot lately.
For example, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going through trying to lose some weight and get into shape. So that means I have to cut back on going out to eat with friends.
Especially certain friends. It really...
and join a community of people with similar goals. You've got your mastermind group.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things, one of the big reasons I like it is because I'm around other people that are trying to do the same thing, and they push me. They're going to beat the daylights out of me tomorrow night, pretty much, because I'm not ready for a long conversation that I have.
Well, you got till tomorrow to figure that out.
Yeah, it won't be fixed by then.
Oh, well.
But, it's really good to have that kind of community, and it's also very important to make sure that you don't have the wrong kind of community. And you and I, like I said, we both have been running into this a lot because we had a fairly diverse group of friends, and we're kind of on our own paths now, and a lot of them are not with us.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. And it's hard to let friends go when you realize they're holding you back. And I don't mean this in a jerk, like, you're holding me back. I mean this in a...
I have to limit my time so that you don't cut my feet out from under.
Yeah, exactly.
Type of thing. Because you do find yourself, over time, adopting the behavior of the people that you're around.
That is so true. And I did this even more back in high school and college. I don't know if you remember this, but I would purposefully hang around people that I wanted to be like.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was going to pick up on certain aspects of their behavior.
Yeah, and I still do that as an adult. There's a substantial number of people that I was around 8 or 10 years ago that I don't hang out with anymore, very purposefully, because I do find that they bring me down a lot. And it just doesn't, it's a lack of value of time and a lack of value of attention, and it's just painful. Mm-hmm. James Altucher, I don't know how he pronounces his name, but I'll see if I can get that link for the show notes, has got a post about how to identify these kind of people in your life. And I shared it on Facebook, actually. So
okay, yeah. That about wraps us up for this episode on valuing your time. Before we close everything out, though, Will, what do you have for us this week for tricks of the trade?
I want to kind of reiterate or restate something that we mentioned earlier, and that is the value of cadence. And what I'm talking about with cadence is having a regular pattern to your life. And what this does is it allows you to build a structure around that pattern. I know we talked about that on the time management, but if you actually start to think about how your workday goes, how all those pieces are laid out, if you can keep that consistent, it's a whole lot easier to plan without the mental overhead of figuring out how to slide pieces in and what all is going to go wrong. If you know that during certain times that you have gaps, or you regularly have a piece of your schedule that you can switch out or whatever. Whereas if you don't have a regular cadence, you can't do that. You have to go through the overhead of trying to figure out your schedule. And one thing that this is also very helpful for in software is you tend to have a lot of recurring processes, and actually being aware of the cadence of those will help you structure your software. The best example I can give you is if you have a cron job that runs once an hour, and you know that it runs, like the third minute of every hour, this job runs, and it runs for 4 minutes, give or take, and it just beats the daylights out of the database. Well, if you're doing something else that's beating the daylights out of the database, you obviously don't want to schedule during that time. Whereas if it's a sporadic job that periodically does it, you can't fix the problem. And so think about the value of cadence in what you're doing, and it'll serve you well as far as being able to schedule both within your personal schedule and within your software development. So that's what I got.
Stand by for Titanfall.
If you have a question or comment for us, please email us at neckbeards@completedeveloperpodcast.com. Our theme music is an excerpt from Stand By for Titanfall by Pure Bells, available on SoundCloud and licensed under Creative Commons. The intro music for IoTs is Hillbilly Hip Hop by Jason Belcher. For references, show notes, and to sign up to our email list, be sure and check out the website at CompleteDeveloperPodcast.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at CompleteDevPod and like our page on Facebook to keep up with the news about the show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.